Well, hello. Here is another Thursday, and here I am with another episode of our Conscious Business Talk Show. And I'm excited to be here with you. As always, so truly grateful whenever you are here and sharing thoughts with me and your ideas and letting me know whether what I'm saying is resonating with you. That means a lot. And it also allows me to know what is relevant for you and what is really, more of what I should focus on in future shows and episodes. So today, I actually wanted to talk about something that I, you know, I was listening to a friend share something that was really present and relevant for her. She's a really smart businesswoman, and I know just how much she brings into what she does, right? How she supports her husband, and just thoughts and ideas and experiences that we have shared in the past lets me know just how much energy she has to carry things that other people sometimes kind of marvel as to, wow, look at all the stuff you are doing and all the things you how do you do this, right? Have you had people come up to you and just, how often have you heard, well, I don't know how you do that because I couldn't do what you do. And you're kind of like, oh, but I just, like, to you, it's normal because that's what you do, right? So when I think of her, that's what comes to my mind. And as she was sharing the experiences that she has gone through recently, especially since the beginning of this year, it brought home to me just how much of what she was going through is also similar to some of the things I'm going through in my personal life, right? I've shared before some of the things with regards to my dad, my brother's accident, just even different transitions and transformations and evolution of my own business journey, right? And it was it also made me realize there is so much that we don't often share because to us it's just something we are living through. It's not necessarily something that we always share the full reality of, right? Because and what the outward perception of that from people looking in, like from the outside kind of thing, it doesn't quite always show up in the transparency that um that is real for us, right? What we are going through is not necessarily what's apparent to others who are watching us from the outside, even friends, even family members sometimes. And that is true of all human beings, not just people who are in business for self or entrepreneurs, but really all human beings, because what we go through personally, we don't always fully share, right? Because you're going through it, so you're not always making time to share it. And besides, there is always this filter that comes into play. But as entrepreneurs, I believe that it shows up a little bit more heavily sometimes because we're also carrying the added responsibility of other livelihoods, right? And the interactions that come into place when we are doing the fulfillment as an entrepreneur for our clients and our customers and people who are exchanging that value with us, right? Our team members show up in that because they depend on their livelihood from us, and us carrying that responsibility really well. So, and for me, this kind of showed up really, it was showing up, but I didn't actually realize it until earlier this afternoon. Yesterday, partway through the day, my dad was taken to the hospital again, right? So, and it was a nursing staff member who had called the ambulance. So I wasn't even there when he was taken in, and I wasn't sure exactly what all had transpired, except for the fact that his blood pressure and his heart rate had made her really, really concerned. So she called the ambulance, which I'm truly grateful for. But in pandemic environment, you're not just able to show up at the hospital afterwards without authorization, right? Unless you're the patient or a physician or somebody who's really actually allowed to be there, you have to get permission to show up. And so that began this cycle of me calling in the main line, who would transfer me to the reception, who would transfer me to the emergency, I guess, main desk, who would transfer me to the relevant staff member, who sometimes may be the clerk, sometimes it is the nurse, depending on the availability, and then the physician, right? So you can see the number of people involved in that. And even the main line, you're pressing this, you're pressing that, then you're getting transferred, then you're having to say all of that stuff again. So every 45 minutes to an hour was my I was repeating the cycle because I was trying to get information on where things were at. They would tell me, call back in this time, call us back in about an hour. And so that went on till about 2 a.m. this morning, at which time I spoke. And throughout this time, I spoke, hey, Vicky, really happy to see you. Thrilled, actually, that you're here. Makes me smile. So can you tell? Yeah, and so this cycle repeated, right? I talked to tons of hospital line operators. I talked to a bunch of, I guess, the main reception, the emergency reception, the clerks, once to a nurse. And then I finally gave up because at 2 o'clock, I think I just fell asleep around sometime around that time. And then I woke up this morning and the cycle began again, except I had a meeting at 11 a.m. that I couldn't push off. Everything else, I kind of just was going that, all right, we'll, hey, MJ, good to see you. And then I think it was around 9 something that the physician finally called me and I was able to talk to them. And in the meantime, I'm trying to my mom's really worried about my dad. I know my brother and my sister-in-law, they wanted to know what was going on and so on. And I'm kind of trying to filter what I'm going to share and so on. And the funny thing was, I was kind of like, okay, this is what I can do. This is the thing I cannot push off. I have to be on this meeting. This is the expectation I'm going to set up for it as I jump on the call. This is, all of the stuff. And it was almost like seamlessly just happening because this is what we do. We show up, we kind of, we figure out what needs to be done, and we just kind of slide it into place as we go along. And we don't always, at least this is what I found, that I wasn't even fully kind of thinking. It was just like, okay, do this, expectation set, call there, phone, what do I need to have in here? I had like flipping 3 phones around me just in case somebody tried to reach me on different device. And I had like my mom's landline, I had like my cell phone, and I even had another device that, if they needed to. But anyway, long story short, this is all that's happening, right? I'm talking to the physician. I realized the gaps that she didn't have because she was talking about certain things. And I'm like, but this isn't addressing the primary thing that was of concern. So that got them chasing after. This was internal medicine that I had to get, make sure that endocrinology was dialed in, the diabetes people were coming in. Like it was just so many layers of it, right? And the funny thing is, at some point I kind of like hung up with that phone, kind of going, but how do you not know that? Where are your charts? Where are your notes? Where everything is documented? Why am I having to say that, right? And then this afternoon, I get a call from another family member who had spoken to the hospital emergency department, gotten some information that they were communicating to my mom. And then I see my mom kind of just go, and I'm like, what just happened here? Why is all this stress all of a sudden? She's flustered, she's so stressed out, and I had to grab the phone and I'm talking and I'm like, wow, this ton of stress coming at me, right? And I'm like, so I addressed it, provided the information that was needed, and kind of like, okay, this is what's happening. And the funny thing, and it still didn't hit me until I was kind of getting my mom to kind of, just come back to the land of, okay, this is what is present, this is how we're going to deal with it, this is what's real. Let's not jump into things that haven't happened yet. Right? And it hit me that in all the things that I dealt with since yesterday, it hadn't somehow overwhelmed me, right? Because I was in a state where it was just coming in. I was a little step removed from it, so that it was, this is what needs to be done. And I was observing, planning, making a decision, implementing it, moving on to the next thing, right? So it's just like all this beautiful dance happening. And in all that, the dissemination of information, because I wasn't stressed. Well, I was, but I wasn't, if that even makes sense. So I was concerned, but I don't believe I was overwhelmed and stressed. I think that's the differentiation. I wasn't passing it on to anybody. So my mom stayed calm. Everybody, was like, okay, this is what's happening, right? But the afternoon experience made me realize that it wasn't that the situation was different. In fact, we were actually getting to where he was now admitted. He was assigned a room. We kind of know, exactly what the next steps are, which teams were called in, and so on, right? But the reason it blew up and all of a sudden, like, everything seemed so ginormous was because the state of being of the person receiving it, because of where they were and all the stuff they were dealing with, it was so overwhelming that it seemed so heavy, right? And because it was so heavy where they were, when they shared it, it literally became so heavy on everybody else that they shared with. And I had to kind of, as I felt myself kind of going, but this doesn't make, like, what's going on? Let's, like, hang on, let's take a step back. It wasn't that I was like this big person with a ginormous halo and unbeatable resources. It was just that somehow, um, thankfully, I was able to be in that state of being that allowed me to have that objectivity in place, right? And that's was the experience of other people then dealing with me, because they were not feeling that weight and that overwhelm. So it changed their experience. They were able to remain objective, right? And it also made me realize that sometimes, and in fact always, it's our decision as to what is entering our little bubble right here, right? And I don't know if you can see the bubble that I'm making, but it's literally what enters your space. It's your choice. And when you make that choice, well, other people, even if they're not making that choice, just because of your state of being, the way you are choosing to deal with things, it also gives them a very different experience, right? And with you modeling it, hopefully, consciously or subconsciously, hopefully they pick up on it, and that changes the experience of the people who are interacting with them. And how that ties into our business life, really, this was a personal situation, but I was making business decisions during this time, because I keep saying this, that entrepreneurs don't exist in a vacuum. We don't. So whatever we are experiencing, the decisions we are making, we don't separate our personal life and just kind of say, okay, not right now, we'll come to that later, and just, this is all I'm dealing with, and that's business. Who can do that? Who can do that? There's always stuff from outside that we are, taking in a manner, right, and making decisions on, but how it enters our perception and um, our space is up to us. And when we do that, that gives us a significant advantage over anybody who's not doing that. Because when you are able to make those decisions from this space that is already settled, right? You are seeing them, observing them, and that allows you to make the right call without getting overwhelmed by the emotional side of things, right? It's not like I'm not concerned about my dad. My gosh, I can't, it's impossible not to be, right? But where am I able to serve him best so that I can make the right decisions, make sure the physicians and the care teams have the right information. My brother, my sister-in-law, my mom, everybody has the right information, right? So that they can make the decisions that they're making. How do I show up so that for the calls, for my clients, for the things that I'm doing, my meetings, I'm showing up in a way where I'm not so distracted that I'm unable to give the information they need. And if I'm not in that space, how do I responsibly step back so they realize that this decision that I'm about to give them, that's not the space that I'm in to really do that. When it's a huge, huge, almost unfair advantage, isn't it? When you have that degree of separation to be able to make that decision. And show up in such a more meaningful way, right? My mom didn't even, like, with all the stuff going on, she was not stressed, she was not flustered. I didn't see her kind of losing it until this afternoon. And then after I kind of said, well, look, it's nothing has changed, it's actually better, right? So now is the time to panic is kind of past. I could see her settle down. And I thought to myself, wow, like that in itself, my being a certain way is affecting her being a certain way, because in the space she's in, she's not consciously making that decision to separate a little bit, right? And that's not right or wrong, it's just where she is. But where I am allows me to show up a certain way for my family, for my friends, for my colleagues, for my business partners. I actually went through an interview where I was contacted by a magazine saying that we really want to feature you, and but they had a vetting process to make sure that everything about it and me and my organization is legit, right? So I was able to get through that despite all of this stuff getting thrown around me, and the uncertainty about what's actually going on at the hospital, because a lot of times I'm just sitting on hold and nobody's telling me anything. So, but I was able to get through that, where the conclusion of that meeting, they said, we really would love to have you as to be featured in that, and actually we would love for you to contribute to our magazine. And in the chaos, that was actually, it felt like oh, cool. That was a win. That I was able to show up in a way that allowed me to honor what I have chosen to do in my business life, right? And not change their experience, where it was like, who is this person? Like, she can't even be present for what we were doing. So I'm going to take a look at the comments to hear your thoughts, because that's one of the highlights for me, it's not just a monologue, right? It's an exchange of ideas. This is the space where we actually talk about it, and a space where we exchange ideas. And the wonderful way we can do that is through comments. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I would love for you to put a like or a comment or subscribe. Just to let me know that what I'm talking about is resonating with you. This makes sense. And if you have ideas for future shows, tell me. I would happily look into it. What are some of the things you are facing and you would love to get some input on, so we can actually bring it up and discuss? Um, okay, and Vicky, you're driving home. Oh my gosh, I love you. Like, thank you for being in your car and hopping on so that we can be together. Really appreciate that. And Vicky, you're right. Everything is computerized now. It's supposed to be seamless, but I think it also depends on how many layers they peel back, right? If the patient is not advocating fully for themselves, sometimes people are not looking. I was actually stunned because the two main reasons he was brought in, they mentioned one and literally said to me, well, maybe that's normal for him. And I'm like, well, what's the baseline? And it kind of was mind blowing for me, but then I had to put it into perspective that this is a hospital. I don't know how many patients they have there right now, how run off they are. And if somehow somebody didn't notate something properly, maybe they don't know. But with proper communication, it actually was resolved. But it was a little hairy when I was hearing that for a second. And thank you. I will take that pat on the back because I was feeling pretty good about that I didn't lose it. I didn't say, are you well? Who's the physician? Because I was able to kind of put a foot in their shoe and think, maybe there's more going on than I realized. And Matt says humans rely on computers to communicate for them now. So the seamless computers crash on the human hardware does not know how to communicate and use information. True that. True that. And Matt, Vicky agrees with you. There you go. And just by choosing to be a certain way, how much of leadership is that? I personally think it's a huge part of it, right? Because how you show up, I believe, is a model for your team, right? And whomever you're leading, if they see their leader imploding or exploding, well, colors that experience so differently, doesn't it? And MJ says, life is a series of choices. We must be able to sort, sift, and separate the issues and deal with the situations that we can control. It takes practice. It does indeed. It does indeed take practice. And sometimes I think choosing what the outcome is that you want to see also allows you to perhaps show up in a different way, right? At least I hope so. In my experience, sometimes I literally have to take a step back and say, what is it I'm trying to do again? Right. Okay. Well, is that the best way to do it? And I think that's where a lot of the awareness bit comes in too. And that's a topic for another show. But today I just wanted to share that it was almost like, the I don't know why I'm thinking about it, but it's almost like the tale of two cities, right? It's like and it's really, I'm using that particular phrase as a contrast, right? Not necessarily anything to do with that itself, but the contrast between the two experiences. I'm like, but I've been dealing with this since yesterday, and I don't believe, like, I don't believe that this set of explosions was happening. The amount of overwhelm and stress that I'm feeling this afternoon coming from these people, what's going on, what's changed? And then I realized what changed was what the internal state was, right? And that's not a reflection on that they can't handle it, because I know that the person and the people involved, and they absolutely can handle it. In fact, they show up amazingly in so many situations. But today, wherever they were, maybe what led up to it, they were in the state of being where all of it was just, everything was a problem, right? And that reminds me of the title that I put on this, that it's a problem or a possibility. And how you treat it either makes it a problem or it allows it to be a possibility that opens doors, allowing you to go where you want to go, right? Realize it, capitalize on it, and build on it to get to the future you really want. So thank you for being with me today. I think it's amazing to have you here. Um, and I thank you for sharing your thoughts. Matt, I I love your take on leadership. I agree with it 100%. And I know that all of you will continue to exchange your thoughts and let me know whether I am exchanging value with you in the way that you need. So thank you again. Love having you here. And we'll see you next Thursday at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific, and 10:30 a.m. Friday morning Brisbane time. So have a great night. We'll see you later. Cheers.